Hey, War Brothers, welcome back to Shoutout Saturday. This is number 16, and this is where I read your lore. If you want to hear your own writing read aloud here, then come submit something in the Build Together forum that is anything based off of the current daily prompt, and just tag it for Shoutout Saturday, and it'll get read here. Now let's read some lore. For day 181, the prompt was, what's a material that requires protective equipment to handle/collect? Like radioactive materials in real life. This comes from Micro Man in the Discord and on TikTok. Now, we've gotten a couple of first-timers in this Shoutout Saturday, and so I'm excited to see what they've written. And Laredia has actually combined two days, number 181 and 179. 179 was, what's an example of a deity or powerful creature dying in your world? What events were caused by this passing? Which was also a Mind Command prompt. Laredia writes Meyer Crystal. Meyer Crystal. While not dangerous when young, fully mature crystals react oddly to magic and elements. The beautiful crimson red crystal grows only in the Shelsmere mountain range. The Meyer, while not 100% dangerous to humans, it changes the area around the crystals like a corruption, sprouting plants that will further add to the corruption. The Meyer crystals grew from the scales of a draconic being that resided within Selshmeyer. The scales scattered throughout the tunnels and caves of the mountains have all grown into the Meyer crystals. This makes mining difficult for the people that live in Selshmeyer, as the crystals are known for exploding when subjected to many vibrations, such as mining and too much walking. The Meyer crystals glow, making it so no lights need to be used in the mines. However, this has caused moths that are drawn to the light to mutate like the plants, causing them to become aggressive and have killed many miners. Mire also can explode or grow rapidly when met with any sort of magic. When the mire reaches a certain size, it shatters and spreads almost like a spore. People that breathe in the spore become severely ill and violent, similar to rabies. The subjects die before any tests can be ran on them being alive. So far, there is no cure, and magical healing makes it worse. So the miners and the people that study the crystals have started wearing gas masks and restrict the groups to around 4 people. Normally, the researchers are in full hazmat. Interesting. Okay. Haven't heard anything from your world yet, and these microcrystals sound really fascinating. Something that people want but are super, super dangerous. Sounds like breaking from being walked around on too much is pretty sketchy. All right, cool stuff. Thanks for your first submission. Probably the Great writes a mild fever, an entry in Rust and Blood. It's cold today. Arthur, by sheer luck, has survived for months in this hell. Kranta died in that second orc wave all those years ago. Big fella ran out of ammo and decided to run to melee. At least he took out a lot of them before that ogre brought him down. Arthur stopped trying to make friends not long after that. They kept dying, and digging the mental hole Arthur was in deeper and deeper. It was better this way, to avoid disappointment. The bell rang, a clean ringing of mechanical precision, much better than the old one from his last post. His actions of heroism landed him deeper into the front lines as part of a forward reclaimer team. In other words, Arthur rips apart the machines used by the forces of death and brings the bits back for reuse. Today, he's supposed to go towards the upper shoreline. Apparently one of the orcs' sea hulks crashed, and Arthur gets the pleasure of working with 20 other men to see what's worth taking. After a short breakfast, eggs and toast, a welcome change from the slop back at OTR 55, Arthur gets suited up and clambers into the scout crawler. Other people try to talk to him pointlessly. Arthur's only here to avoid the wall, not to make friends. Walking past them into the co-pilot seat, Arthur revs up the engine. A loud crackling slows down and becomes near silent as the actual pilot walks into the cabin. Another nameless broad who will die in a week tops. Where did you get the keys? I still have them, and as far as I know, I'm the only certified driver on board. From the last pilot. He dropped them. So you aren't certified? The elemental does most of the work. Ricky's good like that. Ricky? I suppose Ricky could count as a friend for Arthur, but since Ricky is an elemental, Arthur can't exactly find proper companionship with it. He ushers the pilot to sit and get this metal beast moving. Don't rush me. I still have to perform the systems check, and everything is as good as it will be. The engine turned on. I don't think you understand. It turned on. That means that Ricky knows he can move, right? Get a move on before high tide rolls in and we're going submersible. Her face said it all, livid at Arthur's gall and directness. Still, she sat down and drove the crawler forward out of the hangar, engaging the stealth runes as they took their first step on the surface. Arthur tried getting some extra rest in, but his co-pilot kept trying to make conversation. So you're Arthur. Everyone else in the hangar told me you've had it rough. I've only had it rough because I'm still alive. What's that supposed to mean? It means that the longer you're here, the worse everything gets. Okay, my name's Gotta Whiz, watch the wheel, eh? I already was watching. Nice. We got some more narrative. Predwin's really trying his hand at narrative stuff. I like this one a lot. Some good dialogue. I feel like this is pretty solid dialogue for someone who hasn't seemed to have written a lot, at least not that I've read so far. Nugget writes, a Witchfinder's Garb. This is an entry in Time Traveler and the Immortal. If you ask the Witchfinders, magic. If you ask most people, that, gods included, they'll probably say magic. It's been compared to radiation, how it bleeds out over the world after the War of the Gods, infecting humans, wildlife, the environment itself. And when there's an actual condition stemming from having more magic than your body can handle, overload, it's no wonder it's seen as dangerous. The witchfinders dress in a particular manner to avoid getting infected, although the specifics of their attire differs depending on time period and rank. Generally, they are fully covered with thick fabric, usually wool, with several layers of clothing while still maintaining a wide range of motion. They wear leather gloves that go over their cuffs and tall leather boots. There's some form of headdress, a hood, a hat, a scarf, combined with a bird-like plague doctor mask, reinforcing once again that they see magic as a disease, but also a bit of a callback to tradition and the older days of witch hunting. The look is then completed with some kind of indicator of their rank, a badge, stripes, maybe a more intricate mask. Dressing like this is thought to keep out illness by avoiding contact, and it's the intent of the witchfinders that this applies to the arcane as well. Below is an image I drew of Victor in most of his uniform back when he was a witchfinder. I didn't choose to include his mask or hood because, well, I like looking at him, but this should give an idea of what a witchfinder looks like regardless. Let me know if I was supposed to read that last part or not, Nugget. I did because I wasn't sure. Either way, cool look. I like this idea. Always a fan of the Plague Doctor mask. I gotta be honest. Predwin the Great writes an entry in the guild setting, the collaborative effort between Predwin the Great, Mycoman, and Sunny the Soap Eater. Interloper 333, Angel Bones. Documented by Trinity. Class, Palladium, Orichalcum, Rank, Uriel, and Nu. Banishment Ritual. All manifestations of I-333 are to be immediately and without question cordoned off from the public, no matter how much the bones insist they are friendly. All manifestations of I-333 are to be handled only with silver gauntlets or tools. Accumulate all manifestations of I-333 into an isolated area and are to be disposed of with black powder charges as soon as possible. After disposing of manifestations, immediately report to a scribe for mental reconstruction for your own safety and those around you. After a successful disposal of all manifestations, a team of 1 Vanguard, 1 Weaver, and 3 Fodder are to interview all members of the public within the effective area of I-333's manifestation, with the collaborative effects of I-25 to identify any potential latent effects of I-333. All members of the public found to be under the effects of the interloper are to be brought to the actuary for assessment and mental reconstruction. Appearance and hazards. Interloper 333 angel bones are small fragments of bone that manifest as a ball of flaming rock falling from the sky. Upon contact with Gythus, the rock fragments into dozens of pieces of mundane stone with true manifestations scattered therein. All manifestations of I-333 appear capable of thought, communing to others through thoughts and symbols. These symbols, or any other kind of contact with the interloper, are immeasurably dangerous. All collaboratives affected by the mental powers of the interloper report feelings of calm around manifestations and compassion towards said manifestations. These feelings escalate with time, as does the risk of extreme catastrophe. Physical touch with manifestations of I-333 result in a near immediate explosion the size of most townships that causes an also instantaneous rift surge with unpredictable outcomes. This outcome also occurs if any individuals under the rift effects of I-333 are allowed to keep their memories for at least a week. Of all manifestations thus far, only the first 6 resulted in an incident. Additional information of I-333's effects are its interloper number. Referring to I-333 as anything other than 333 is impossible. Discovery. By deciphering a tome found within I-1, a delve team made instant contact with the first manifestation of I-333. Despite numerically coming between I-25 and I-27, archivers found they could only write or refer to the interloper as I-333. Great stuff so far. The guild stuff has been really well written. There were a couple instances where your tense seemed off and I wasn't sure how to correct it, so I read it as was and it was a little off. But the actual prose is fantastic. Very SAP like. You guys have captured that vibe very well. For day 182, the prompt was, what is a weird use or way of disposing of excrement in your world? Predwin the Great writes, munitions of... Oh, ew. This is a rust and blood entry. Even ashes will rise! A growl charged towards the unbeliever's bunker, bullets ripping deep into his flesh, but he charged nonetheless. Bits and pieces of his body flew off as buckshot and machine gun fire tore him apart. The torrent grew to be more than his body could handle as he collapsed into the mud. He was still awake, watching his brothers and sisters charge past him, nearly making it into the bunker before the guns shredded them apart like blissfully rotten food. The battle grew silent quickly. He would be able to move again soon, so long as the cowards don't start their heinous ritual of double tapping. He should get his pistol ready just in case. Bang. Bang. Cowards. They indeed were double tapping. Agral readied his pistol as he feigned unconsciousness, looking with slittered eyes as 2 men grew closer and closer. Oh, gee, look at that one, Greg. He's more bloated than you, Meemaw. You shut your whole mouth, you bastard. He's clearly more bloated than your mother. They flattered Agral. He'd been working on his intestinal parasite count and was glad they noticed. They would make great companions if only they'd accept the glorious ways of Ragash. One of the two soldiers walked right over to him as Agral took aim and fired at the soldier's leg. Unfortunately, the other one shot back faster than Agral could hit him too, knocking Agral's pistol far out of his reach. Frick, I'm hit. Agral chimed in. Fool, you are doomed by my munitions of bile. Ha 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 ha. You're what? Hopefully I did a good job with the voices. Let me know, Predwin. I'm working on doing that. Sometimes it's hard for me to get into it for some reason. It just kind of depends on the mood I'm in, and I tried for this one. Let me know if I got the vibes here correctly. For day 183, the prompt was, is there gambling in your world? On what? And how legal/common is it? Aris writes, Galavan 15, Vagon Singularity. Galavan 15, a planet covered in massive sprawling supercities dedicated to the craft of gambling and casinos. The four main cities of the planet were originally built as mining operations when Galavan 15 was known as a jungle planet. The cities are named after the mining corps, Sevkot, Have, Matishorv, and Retfide. At around year 600 DPT, Galvan was controlled by two main mafia groups. One is Lunais, a group that mainly worked around intel. The other is Kavran, a group that believes brute force and fear is the best way to keep loyalty. Galvan 15 is also known as the birthplace of the most dangerous individual in Singularity by far, as Kavran often ran projects to make machines for various purposes, one of which escaped, but that's against the point. In present times, Galvan has branched out and formed a small interstellar empire of their own, which is quite successful. Many different gambling games from almost every faction can be found in Galvan's many stations and worlds. Although Galvan has a house always wins policy, they also make sure people win and keep their winnings. They even have their own military force dedicated to ensuring their people are safe, because the most common time people get attacked at a casino is when someone hits a jackpot. Usually, in order to keep the patrons safe, Galvan soldiers will calmly escort the jackpot winners to a private suite while they process the payment so criminals can't reach them. Though if this is done on Galvan 15, they would need to pay the mafia per jackpot. Otherwise, they would take action as well. How many planets have you made so far, Aris? I'm curious. If you do end up watching this, I want to know like how many have you created and which ones have the most depth. I should probably be asking this in Discord, but this just really sparked that question, so I'm gonna leave it in here and see what you say if you find this. Carhop writes, Prospera's whim, a merchant's proverb. But before you enter the den of fools, your eyes alight with temptation by jewels. Think first of how coin through diligence pools, when not tested by her mercurial rules. Propsora's whim is half game, half ceremony, invoked whenever frivolously wealthy or foolishly desperate men wish to test their favor in the gilded lady's sight. Held anywhere a wheeler can be found, whether the vaulted game halls of the wealthy in Vasimeno or rickety saloons at the frontier, the game has no rules but what the wheeler divines from their decks of fate. The wheeler then states the rules, deals prayer embossed cards from a deck of silk playing cards, and plays according to their drawn hand against the invoker of the game. Should the wheeler win, they invoke their right a poena tributum and conscript half of their opponent's total wealth, due to the nearest available bounty house within 48 hours. The consequences for not delivering range from a simple additional penalty up to a coincidental visit by ruffians and burglars. This has led many of the more wealthy would-be players to spontaneously gift much of their fortune to family, close friends, and allies before invoking the game. Dead hands. Officially, the clergy of Prospera are entitled to take their tithes and taxes via the conscripting of soldiers or mercenaries as declared in their banking charters. However, when the local muscle is found to be lacking, wheelers will send their own teams of priest thieves to finish the job. These anointed criminals are called dead hands and operate in near perfect silence while bleeding wallets and vaults dry. Blessed by their faith in fortune and devotion to dominion, a dead hand's coming is sure to leave naught but regret as hollow as their victim's pocketbook. Should the invoker of the game win, they are awarded an amount of money based on a second divining from the deck of fate. A writ is produced by the wheeler, which can be exchanged for funds at any bounty house found at Restris, or goods and services provided by the merchants inside the houses. Should no winner be determined by the game, a draw is declared and both parties exchange the most valuable possession on their person at the time. A tall tale of this outcome is famously told throughout the lands, where a desperate man played in naught but the skin he was born in. When a draw was declared, the wheeler chuckled and pressed an ornate dagger into the man's palm before shooing him away. The next day, as the story goes, the man's flayed skin was found stuck to the door of the bounty house, held in place by his swindled dagger. Upon further examination, a message was carved into it. Tempt not fate and fortune, lest Prospera's winds blow foul upon your house. That's great stuff, Carhop. I really, really like this. Very like I've said this before, but your mythology writing and like Is this true? Is this all folktale? And the little additions of the little note, like side notes, are really, really good. This is like a super compelling, like short piece. I like this a lot. It's giving your version of dealing with the devil at crossroads. Someone's got to get their fiddle out and try and outdo this Wheeler fellow. For day 184, the prompt was, what is a legendary or otherwise famous artifact that a government holds power over in your world? This one comes from Probin the Great in the Discord and on TikTok. Probin the Great writes, the red shell, a rust and blood entry. I am imprisoned. Men in cloth robes with pencils and paper come to me and write things. They refer to me as something less than alive, a subject, specimen to be studied. They poke and prod me with metals that burn and sear my mortal form forever. I am riddled with the results of their tests. The pain will not fade, as is my nature. They call my prison the red shell. It is the only thing that is ever named in this hell. They are cautious to not reveal their own names, or that of their fellows. I am not that kind of creature. But I cannot tell them, for they have silenced my casing with magics I cannot dispel. When night comes, they turn off the lights and leave me to weep in the dark. Sometimes, in the distance, I hear them laughing over jokes between one another, enjoying companionship while I rot and beg for freedom. They silence my efforts to speak with the fogged glass, installing mechanisms I could never understand. They used to talk to me out of this cage and call me by my name, but those times were centuries ago. They keep me half-starved, afraid of power that I would never wield against them. My very nature betrays me, preventing my own escape, an escape that hasn't presented itself again in hundreds of years. The worst part of all of this woeful existence, is the times when they don't call me a subject or a specimen, but when they call me a weapon. The end outcome of this little piece is really, really good, President the Great. That's all I really have to say about it. It's good. Nugget writes, Chaos's Crystal Prison, an entry in Time Traveler and the Immortal. How do you kill a primordial god? Simple, you can't. They are constructs of the universe itself and cannot be removed. You cannot have a working reality without time, without space, without chaos. They cannot be killed. But you can't get close. Before even the days of the old religion, the three primordial gods were created in the Big Bang. They are of equal power, but crafted to keep the others in check. Time's secondary domain of order holds power over chaos. Chaos's knack for destruction targets Stella's creations, and the vastness of space can warp time. It's like a game of rock, paper, scissors. When they inherited the world, each wanted to gift humanity with something. Stella gave them the sun, and Time gave them the moon. Chaos, as a god of destruction, cannot create anything. It's against his nature. So instead, he took an apple seed and embedded it with his energy before planting it in the ground, gifting humanity with free will for those who ate from the tree. Stella didn't like this. She wanted humanity to be perfect, and chaos ruined them by stripping them of their ability to be controlled. She couldn't do anything directly, but she could take advantage of Chaos's impulsive nature and convince him to kill Time, hoping Time would kill him instead. Time let it happen, getting fatally wounded by Chaos before throwing himself forward in time, where he's been missing ever since. But not before restraining Chaos, reducing him to its soul and trapping it in a crystal prison. Stella declared herself the queen of the gods, and while Time's status remains unknown, Chaos's crystal has been kept safely in her possession, hidden from the world, until the final days of the Divine War, where desperate Moors accidentally stumbled upon the forgotten god, who was all too willing to make a deal. Probin the Great writes, Interloper 149, Crassus Stave, a guild entry. Documented by Trinity, class Palladium, rank Phi. Storage ritual. I-149 is to be stored in a 10 by 10 by 2 foot solid silver container lined with standard barrier glyphs that can be found on page 104 of the Interloper Item Storage Rituals Grimoire. Glyphs are to be regularly repainted every fortnight with standard palladium-lined paint. Additionally, a 6-layer weave bind is to be placed below the storage box, to be regularly charged by rift touched every other hour. Every full moon, a single virgin sacrifice is to be conducted in order to avoid catastrophic storage failure exceeding Uriel level danger. As of the Crassus Steve is no longer to be stored in the actuary and instead relocated to avoid further storage failure / banishment of other collaborative interlopers. Appearance. Interloper 149, the Crassus stave, is a 7-foot long solid palladium stave covered in Rift script that as of yet hasn't been translated due to low scribe availability. The stave weighs roughly as much as 3 hens and sports a large blunt head with the face of an unknown individual that also appears within tomes found inside of I-1. Collaborative effects. Interloper 149 is capable of massive graviturgical manipulation, able to crush most mundane infantry into a paste within the blink of an eye when its command word, Crassus, is spoken. This command word is immediately revealed to any who touch the interloper with bare hands. Its effects also spread to Orichalcum class interlopers, allowing for easy dispatching of even the most gargantuan of interlopers in the aforementioned class. As such, the Crassus stave is to be safely stored until further notice from the directors. Discovery. I-149 was found utilizing standard tome decryption of I-1 contents. The stave was first found by a farmhand, who spoke the command word after it was revealed, killing 3 of the 10 collaboratives sent to retrieve the interloper. The farmhand was immediately sent to the actuary for assessment, which they failed. I like big metal stick with stuff on it. That's cool. The Wanderer writes their first Shoutout Saturday entry, The Sacred Blade of Eldor. While many rulers use artifacts to secure their power, Eldor Castle, the capital city of Eldar, has it in reverse. The Sacred Blade secures the line. The city is in a hollowed mountain with colossal rooms and structures inside the likes of which scarcely exist elsewhere, but the castle is controlled by the Sacred Blade of Eldor. If the city wants the great chandeliers to shine, for the water to flow in, for the arcane machinery to operate, the Sacred Blade is required. And it only listens to the crowned monarch from the royal line. The royalty cannot be replaced, for if they were, the entire city goes cold and dark. Beyond that, the blade can be used to channel divine energy from the Eldar's patron goddess. When it was broken, the nation nearly crumbled, but when the royal line was rediscovered and the blade reformed, the city that never was taken saw the lights again. This is a really cool idea. I don't know if I've ever heard anything quite like this before, in which you have a almost a god emperor, but it's a family line that if they are not in power, things simply do not work. That's a really cool concept. For day 185, the prompt was, where is the most food exported from in your setting? This comes from Predwin the Great in the Discord and on TikTok. Predwin the Great writes, the fields of Thrimbacher, a entry in Rust and Blood. Thrimbacher, a small town in Mirii, a state of Caldatha, pound for pound, exports the most food out of any other single place in turmoil. Thrimbacher's proximity to the Drachamelt River, rich soil, and location make for optimal crop growth, allowing for upwards of 8 million tons of food coming from this small town alone. So, how do they do it? With sponsorship from the coffers of the Caldethi royal palace itself, Thrimbacher was subject to massive overhauls at the beginning of the Orc War. Steam crawlers, decommissioned from frontline use, refitted with agricultural equipment that can plow a field and plant it at the same time, all while spraying fertilizer. There are also a large amount of steam tech soldiers also decommissioned whose spirit complexes are seemingly soothed by farm work. The citizens of Thrimbacher live far more luxurious lives than some nobles, with their massive profits and autonomous workers allowing them to sit and relax nearly all day sipping lemonade on their porches. On that last note, nobles around Kamar have become outraged by the power these farmers are allowed to wield politically, with words of impending sabotage spreading in the shadows. I know this sounds a little bit dark, but it's actually kind of wholesome. I love the idea of little robots with entities inside of them that are just happy to finally only be farming. I dig that. So I figured I would start to include some of these days that actually don't have any results, just so that we actually know all the prompts as we read through them. And so for day 186, though I had no submissions for Shoutout Saturday, did have submissions in the Discord if you were interested in reading some people's writing. But the prompt for that day was, what's a company or government that fell apart over controversy in your world? And then for day 187, the prompt was, what creatures are protected or endangered, and what are the protections in place for them? This came from Milkshake Madness in the TikTok comments on my TikTok page. The Wanderer writes, Behemoths primordially endangered. Behemoths are primordial creatures. They were sent over into Endron as part of an invasion on the whole of creation. Being 3 miles tall and having a voice powerful enough to send shockwaves, they were used to resonate with mountains and shatter them. However, they were shown kindness and switched sides, becoming pacifist, immortal, gentle giants. Eons later, they're still around. They're immortal, with their numbers only growing by around 9 to 14. These fellows are worshipped as divine carriers who take souls to the great collection to be reincarnated. Not true, but is the religion. As such, while people live on them and build cities on their backs, they ensure that the behemoths are cleaned, healthy, and treat them with respect. However, multiple behemoths have died, and the population is growing at slightly less than net zero. Attempts have been made to make them repopulate, but none have been successful. They're protected and endangered, but the locals in the far wilds can do very little to protect these big fellas. This is awesome. I really love megafauna, especially like at these scales where you have things that are like miles in length and cities are built on their backs. It makes me think of the great shells in Brandon Sanderson's Rishar setting, which is like super cool. I love these kinds of vibes, these giant, slow, immortal entities that are like so big that they're not that thoughtful of the things around them, but the things around them like imply all these great, grandiose objectives that these things have. Great stuff. Thanks, The Wanderer, for this submission. Now, I accidentally left out a day 179 prompt last time that was submitted before I was recording for Shoutout Saturday, and so I don't know how I missed it. That's on me. I am so apologize, Nugget, but let's re-review day 179, where the prompt was, what's an example of a deity or powerful creature dying in your world? What events were caused by this passing? This came from Mycoman in the Discord and on TikTok. And this will be the last entry for this Shoutout Saturday. Nugget writes, what could kill a god? A entry in Time Traveler and the Immortal. What could kill a god? A question no one thought would need to be asked. Even as tensions between the gods snapped and the war started, no one thought they were capable of dying until they began going missing and showing up dead. In their defense, they had no reason to believe any differently. Only the primordial gods have the power to kill a god, but their existence was entirely unknown to even the gods. But they weren't slaughtering the gods during the war. That honor goes to the dreaded sunlight Emrys Aurelius. Then simply known as Aurelius, he is not a primordial god himself, but rather, he is the direct child of Stella, created of her own flesh and blood, and as such has her same abilities. He was ultimately deemed too human, and too innately flawed to join the pantheon as an official god, which deeply angered him. If he wasn't good enough to be considered a god, no one else was either. He already knew about the tensions between the gods from Stella's constant need for perfection, so he began quietly and subtly poking and prodding at them, turning the gods against each other and letting them fight amongst themselves. From there, he would ambush various gods, isolated and injured, and finish the job himself. Even as the gods began dying, no one knew it was Aurelius. Stella was ashamed of his creation and never revealed his existence for fear of how her mistakes would reflect on her. Unfortunately, this just caused people to blame her for the deaths instead. Even if they didn't know why exactly, they could piece together that if she created the gods, she could probably destroy them as well, all of which was intentional from Aurelius. Not only did he want the gods dead, he wanted it to fall back on Stella. He wanted her perfect creations to turn against her before they die like cattle because of her. He wanted it to hurt. It's unknown how long the war lasted. The world was too broken to properly track time. But by the time Aurelius was taken out of commission and left behind on Earth, nothing was the same. The gods broke much of the world. Most of the pantheon was dead. Mortals grew to despise the concept of the gods. The primordial god Chaos was missing, and Stella all but abandoned humanity. The souls of the gods are under a lot of constant strain from the amount of magic they wield. When they die, their souls shatter and their magic bleeds out like radiation. The gods do not deserve afterlives. Well, that's a wrap for Shoutout Saturday number 16. Thanks to all of our wonderful submitters and all this awesome world building and lore that we got to read and listen to. I hope that you have a wonderful Saturday, whatever today it is that you're watching this. If you're interested in this kind of thing, want to see more of these, then please feel free to like and subscribe. It's a one click away if you stop liking me and want to unsubscribe, and that is super chill. That is absolutely fine by me. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed watching, and I thank you very much for watching. We will see you again next week for Shoutout Saturday number 17.